Hey everybody, my name's Rob Kientz. For those who haven't met me, I'm the author of the Freedom Report. Those of you who have heard me in the past speak at conferences may know me from a company I ran called Gold Silver Pros. I was primarily a financial guy talking about honest money, and I was sort of morphed into talking about everything freedom. So my first year here at PortFest, appreciate everybody here. It's been a great experience. Have loved this. It's been a lot of fun. Not my typical conference. I usually go to stuffy financial conferences dressed in a suit, so it's nice to be able to present in shorts and a t-shirt. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter. I used to write quite a bit for different outlets as well. I'm also here as a board member of Citizens for Sound Money. We have this tent right over here along with Alpine Gold. We're going to be having to get together as well at 6 p.m. with some beer, wine, and things. If you guys are interested, we'll talk more about that at the end. Today's report's analysis of post-dollar currency alternatives. So many of you that are involved in the monetary side of things are aware that the US dollar is probably on its way out, de-dollarization, inflation, that type of thing. And you may have been looking at different alternatives for what you could do to combat the current inflation, but also where to put your money in the event that we have bank failures, which I think we saw last year and will probably continue as the US dollar continues to weaken. So we're going to talk about that. So I'm owner of the Freedom Report, YouTube, Twitter, 15 years experience analyzing, writing on, and producing content about economic, currencies, bullion, and everything related to the above at lots of different conferences. The last one I spoke at was the big miners conference in Toronto called PDAC. Has about 30,000 people every year, and I try to get around, and I don't do as many conferences as I used to, but I try to get around a little bit. We're going to talk about the fiat currency era. This is a lot of the currencies that have existed, some still existing. You can see the dollar is in here. I think we've got euros in here. But basically, this is a tapestry representing all the fiat currencies over time that have failed and basically have the 100% failure rate when they go pure fiat. And fiat just means by government edict or by edict. And a pure fiat currency is something that's not backed by a commodity or gold or any other sort of consideration. Notable hyperinflations and failures in history. China developed the first paper currency called the jiaozi that circulated in modern-day Sichuan during the Song dynasty. It had high inflation, of course, which led to its replacement, which was the huizi in 1161. There were a couple of different ones China kept trying over and over and again. They just kept failing because they didn't have the backing of anything. It was just paper. Other notable ones, in 1716, France, John Law had convertibility to gold for 2 years on the currency, and then he removed it. It also was responsible for the Mississippi Company. A lot of you may know that hyperinflated the stock and also the currency at the same time and destroyed the paper currency system. Other ones, the assignat of the French Revolution. In early Soviet Union, 1917, civil war between communists and anti-communists blew up their currency. Of course, they were spending on war. And that's a common theme of the failure of currencies is war and having to spend for extraordinary expenses you may not normally have. We also had Weimar Germany, which is the most famous one, which eventually led to World War II and Hitler and all those terrible things. Interestingly, my family is German. We came over in the 1850s. When America got involved in the war, my father, living in Columbus, Ohio, as part of Germantown, was one of the first to sign up. So he was in D-Day as a naval medic and as a radio operator on D-Day. It was in the second landing. So after we made our initial push into Normandy Beach and kind of push back the Germans, he got to go on shore and treat all the people, you know, that were sick. And because he's a radio operator and a medic, they said, hey, we know that you're normally supposed to be on a boat, but we're going to drag you through the March to Germany. So he did the March to Germany with all of the Marines and the you know, the other troops. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. China, 1935 to 48. In 1933, interestingly, what happened here was the U.S. passed the Silver Purchase Act, which reversed flows of silver out of China. So China had been the mass importer of silver. Now they were the exporter because the U.S. and other Western nations were purchasing a bunch of silver. And they then introduced another fiat currency, not having learned from way back a few centuries ago, and ended up blowing up the FABI. So China's done this many, many times. They're well aware, I think, of the potential destruction of fiat currencies and the issues that it brings socioeconomically, politically, culturally. And I think that's why that China is so big behind right now. Gold, silver's telling their citizens to buy gold because they remember the lessons of the last few centuries. According to a study by the World Gold Council in 2023, the world's central banks, the ones that issue these fiat currencies, indicated they were dropping dollars as foreign reserve holdings. At the time I originally wrote this presentation, I think July of last year, we were already at a historical low of dollars held in foreign accounts, foreign reserves at 58%. They indicated it would be about now 3.5, 4 years from now, we would get down to the 40 to 50% range, which would make the dollar not the dominant currency, just one of the circulating melange, if you will, of different fiat currencies. Significant reduction, very symbolic of the end of dollar domination. Now, the end of the dollar is probably going to take a little while. We have something called the military, which we use to enforce it, but what the BRICS nations are doing is they're getting really smart. They built the Belt and Road Initiative. They've got gold-backed digital currencies they're working on. That's been a rumor for a lot of the BRICS nations. Zimbabwe has one now, I think. But they're also working on CBDCs, and this is a really nasty part we'll get to here in a minute. According to BIS, UNCTAD, and JP Morgan, who did this study, the risk of this I think is a quote from Strategic Research at JP Morgan, the risk of de-dollarization, which is periodically recurrent theme throughout post-war history, has returned into focus due to geopolitical and geostrategic shifts, said Alexander Wise. In other words, everybody's getting rid of the dollar, and you can see it here on the chart in terms of its share of global exports has fallen. And the share of global FX volumes, although it rose, leading up to the tech crisis in 2000 has fallen and has never recovered and probably never will if we go back to this report by the World Gold Council. This is basically going to be the end of the dollar dominance. Postal alternative. So we're going to talk about the one that the controllers, the elites, what I call the crazy Marxists of the world want to put into place because they want to control everything and everyone. Are digitalized central currencies being designed for implementation over 130 countries. If you go to the Atlantic Council's website, which is a famous elitist think tank, I think there's 138 of these in various stages of development, which includes all of the major industrialized nations and everybody else. So this is going to go down. Everybody's agreed to it. We've had position papers from the BIS, the IMF, all the world central banks, including the New York, the Fed, through the New York Financial Technical Office, is implementing right now central bank digital currencies. It's going down right now as we speak. Progress is underway testing these currencies locally in international trade scenarios. I'm going to go through a lot of the projects that you guys can go to bis.org and look up. Or you can just simply go to bis.org and look up their projects, and you'll see all of these there. It's all in black and white. All of the information's there for you. No conspiracy theory, all out in the open. Just do your research, and it's right there. They're going to set up a two-tier system of wholesale currencies for international settlement, that's central bank to central bank, or participating commercial bank to commercial bank, but it's at the country-to-country sovereign level. And then they're going to have a retail currency for local and national trade. So if you're trading, you get the retail CBDC. You'll have that on your phone, an app, or however they want to do it. And if that blows up, it's okay because they got the second layer called the wholesale one, so that the official currency, international trade currency, never blows up. What they'll do is they'll deflate your retail currency, steal all your wealth, and then just rebuild it again, make you do it all over again. It's a really nasty system because they're basically going to screw everything up like governments do and central banks do, and then they're going to steal all your wealth and they're going to do it all over again. And if they get the system in place, it'll never stop. Unless, revolution maybe, I don't know. Designed to prevent a single currency dominance and prevent hyperinflation scenarios. That's how they're selling it, but it's also a digital slavery system. Ultimately, we'll have a stablecoin element, most likely gold backing. One of my friends who used to work for Naval Intelligence helped me out with this piece of it. He's been researching this for a long time. He's now retired. But he found one of the projects I'll talk to you about was actually put together by a couple of Russian researchers about how they're going to back it initially with gold. From Cointelegraph, a online crypto magazine, there are several vital differences between CBDCs and wholesale CBDCs and retail CBDCs that relate to their use, who uses them, and their impacts. Importantly, wholesale CBDCs are meant for use in interbank settlements and blah, 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 and retail are planned for use by the general public. Just confirming what I said here a moment ago about having two tiers, being able to hyperinflate the retail tier, reset as many times as they want, but not affecting international trade or international standing. What they're trying to do here is have control of aggregate monetary flow within the country's borders, but maintain their independence between other countries without a dollar-dominant currency or a pound or something like that. screwing up the entire world economy. Here is one of the exhibits from one of the projects on the BIS. There's tons of these presentations. They're talking about the existing system and the problems with traditional cross-border payment flow. You have country A, you have a bank, it's got a bunch of intermediaries, and then you have somebody, so say you're sending money to somebody in France, maybe you have family, it could take 3 or 4 days, they could lose it, you know, you could pull your hair out and go crazy. It's because they have all this, and really, this is a very manual system. There are systems connecting SWIFT and these payments, but it requires people to be there basically 24/7 to interpret the system to say, okay, this is what it really means, and this is the person that should get the money, and this is what we should charge. It's really a horrible system developed way back in the 50s and 60s, not great, and it's one of the reasons they want to replace it with CBDCs. Of course, it uses blockchains, a lot more efficient, that type of thing will reduce costs, and that's actually the good part about the new system, is it's going to be a lot more efficient and better in terms of validation and making sure the money gets to the right place, if you subtract all the digital slavery part that comes with it. Frictions in current corresponding banking arrangements, a lot of manual labor, different operating hours, communication standards. All these systems have not been, a lot of them were developed on different technologies. They don't communicate. That's where you need the people to get involved. High costs and all that type of thing. There are 3 models for the proposed central bank digital currency system. I'm not really going to go through them. I just put this up there to show you that regardless if you're in a third world country or if you're in a first world country, they're going to make the system work because they know how all those systems work, and they're building the system to be tolerant of what's currently in place. And one thing that people don't understand when we talk about this, myself and others, Aaron Day, who's over with us in our booth, talks about this all the time as well, is that people think that you have to have a big technology reset for this. Well, eventually you do, but they've got it down to where they're going to connect all these disparate systems with this application software around it and make it all work. And then on the backside, over the next 20 years, they're going to get everybody on the same system. So they could do it right now. The projects have been tested that show that the cross-border payments between multiple entities simultaneously work. They're just working out the kinks. And some of the internal country stacks. So if you think about, if you're sending money to someone and you go from point A to point B, that would be from the US to France, that's relatively easy. They've got that problem solved. They don't have the internal workings of every country's banking system solved, but that's what they're going to do with the middleware. The middleware is going to translate all this, make the right call, and then over the next 20 years, the next generation, they're basically going to solve all the internal country technical stack things. And so it's going to be very quick. In fact, if they needed to turn this on now, they probably could. The BIS is facilitating all this. They're sort of the master planners of all this with the support of every country, including the US and the Fed, which lies and says they're not doing this. Their logo's all over these projects on the BIS website, so it's there. Designed to address the current issues, and there are current issues. Dollar dominance, they want to get rid of the dollar's world reserve currency. It's going away anyway, we saw by the studies. Inability of fiat monetary systems to maintain value, settlement times and delays, privacy, regulation efficiency, so on and so forth. That's what they say publicly. Here's the BIS Innovation Hub. If you want to look at all these projects, just go to the BIS page, go to Innovation Hub, and to projects, and you'll see all these. You can read them for yourself. Do your own research there. Don't believe anything anybody says, including me or anybody else. Although I love Chris Martenson. He's a great speaker, so I would believe everything he says. But yeah, do your own research here. I'm very big on all my videos. I say do your own research. Never believe anybody. Always confirm for yourself. Go to the source. Yeah, much like Chris, I'm very much a source document guy. The technology stack. So they already have the system design that will work. With the advent of technology and cloud technology and all of those things, I've been in tech for about 25 years. I have a master's in information assurance, which is cybersecurity. Last job I worked for was at Verizon. I was securing their 5G mobile network against external attackers, and so we did pen tests and all that kind of stuff. So all this kind of geeky technical stuff is up my alley, and I understand it. And I did a lot of cloud audits and cloud reviews. All the technology exists to do this, and this is the map that basically says how they're going to do it. It's here now, live, being tested, and they could turn it on if they had to pretty quickly. And this is just from one of their documents showing how they're going to do it. Lots of working projects. I'm going to go through some of those now. I'm going to get kind of in depth and in the weeds just a bit, just to show you that it exists, that it's here right now. It's not a tomorrow thing, it's a today thing. Many countries are working on this, including the Federal Reserve. Project Icebreaker concludes experiment for a new architecture for cross-border retail. That's if you want to send your retail currency to someone across the world, that's that project. Dunbar is international settlements using multiple CBDCs. That's where, let's say, if you're a sports fan, everybody here follows the NBA, but sometimes you have a 3-team trade. So 3 teams get involved and everybody gets assets out of it. Well, this is like the 3-team trade in digital currencies. They take 3 or more countries and they say, okay, we're gonna run a bunch of transactions through, all dependent on one another, and see if it works. Well, that's that project. So they basically is showing that the entire world can enter this system and trade at the speed of light and have it work, and it's not gonna break down. That's that project. And then there's Enbridge, which is a really nasty one, which is experimenting with multi-CBDC platform, the one that the Fed really got involved with, and it's solving some of the inefficiencies of cross-border payments and all that kind of stuff. So it's an extension of Project Dunbar, and it's the one that basically was the Prove It project for the central bank digital currencies. There's a lot of news now on Enbridge. Enbridge is now a keyword that if you put it into Google, you'll find it pretty quickly. This is actually, once news about Project Enbridge came up about this system really working in real time, all of these countries, this is when a lot of people started getting interested. Other notable projects, Project Hertho was identifying financial crime patterns while preserving user privacy. What that really means is this is how they can see everything that you do. And it's to be done under the guise of money laundering, financial crime, but really that's how they control what you spend and track what you spend and all that kind of stuff. Other projects, Fuse, modernize financial market infrastructures. That's where they build the tech stack. Pixtrol, monitoring stable coins. We'll get into that in a moment. Project Gaia, climate risk analysis. On Project Gaia, they're going to take climate change data for every country, and they're going to put it into the blockchain. And once you pass a threshold, they can turn off your currency. So if you're using too much fossil fuels, you don't get to eat. That's that project. And that's worldwide, not just in China, not just in Russia, not just in Zimbabwe. That's all 138 participating countries. And so think about that for a moment. What if an edict comes out from the UN that says we're using too much fossil fuels? They can turn entire countries off if they want to, or just reduce it, or do whatever they want. Project Nexus is enabling instant cross-border payments. We went over that one. Here's the interesting one. Here's one that came to me from a friend of mine that was in naval intelligence. Aurum is a retail CBDC technology prototype, blah, 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 blah. The key here is Aurum is a keyword for gold. They're going to back it up initially with 40% gold, because in the early 1900s, when they were proposing the gold standard, all the economists and financial types knew that if you could back a currency with 40% gold, it would remain stable. It's very hard to hyperinflate, because you always had to, as long as you kept that 40% gold up, you never got to hyperinflation status. You could get to moderate inflation, but the system wouldn't break down. And once your gold reserves fell under 40% of your cash, then you had to stop issuing cash, buy gold, and that stabilized the system. Much like if you have a portfolio of assets and you buy 10% gold, it stabilizes your returns over any 10-year given period. It does the same for the financial system. So originally, they're going to put 40% gold backing, and then eventually they're going to take it away and go pure fiat. That's the goal. They think they can do that within about 15 to 20 years after instituting the system. So they can completely get gold out of the system and go to pure fiat. But they need to do some additional testing and things like that to make sure that they can make it stable. Unit Foundation, this is the 2 Russian authors. It's a fractal monetary design. Has anybody heard of a fractal before? I know what a fractal is? Okay, very good. Fractal occurs in nature. It explains how a mollusk can have a spiral shape, a hurricane can have a spiral shape, and a universe can have a spiral shape, because essence of mathematics is it can scale infinitely, and you can see the same patterns over and over. That's how we can have a molecular structure that powers the great universe, all that kind of stuff. Essentially, it's math explaining the universe and how that works. Well, what they figured out is, well, if that's true, can't we do that in currency to issue as much currency as we want without breaking it? Yes, as long as the pattern fits stable currencies. So that's why the gold, so what they want to do is back at 40% gold and then figure out how to use fractals to model the perfect pure fiat currency, and then they're going to take the gold out. But the gold has to be there for now, because I haven't solved the fractal problem just yet. Global currency agnostic of state borders and economic policies. The Unit Foundation is proposing that they're taking a page from the Bitcoin book and saying the the value of the electronic currency is in the network, not in the commodity or the real naturally limited money. But in this case, they're not going to limit it to 21 million Bitcoin. They're going to go fractal. But what they want to do is have one currency. There's no longer going to be a digital dollar. It's going to morph into the world unit. This is about 20 years after this is implemented. So once you have a world currency, what happens to our national borders? You no longer have them. Because now you've got the UN and all these other groups controlling policy through climate change and through things like that, and through a digital currency, which is one unit. As soon as you remove the autonomy of money from a society, you remove the autonomy of their culture and the political system. And this is the design to make a one world government. To have a one world government, you must have a one world currency. This is one world currency that will power a one world government. Yes, that's what these crazy people want to do. All you got to do is go read their position papers. They're all nuts, but it's right there on their website. My view on the system, they want to quickly in a relative term, about 20 years to move to a centrally controlled digital currency. Well, in the next 4 to 5 to move to it, and 20 years to perfect it. Circumventing differences in political jurisdictions and monetary authorities. There are laws on the books which make things different. Think Sharia law versus Western law, interest rates, things like that. There are things that need to be ironed out, but that's what they're going to work through over the next 20 years, in addition to perfecting the one world currency and global enslavement and all that kind of stuff. They're going to align the policy into 10 or 20 years. The second phase begins irrespective of national monetary culture and political systems. Monetary transaction flows to police non-compliant behavior. So if you think of the Chinese social credit system, a lot of you I know are aware of coming to this type of conference. I don't have to tell you about that. You guys are smart. But they're going to institute Chinese social credit around the world. So if you don't go visit your parents, they'll dock you points. And maybe you can't buy groceries that week, or maybe you can't get on the train. Or if you speak out against your government, maybe they turn off your electricity or whatever the case may be. They're going to do this worldwide. And China is, what they do when they do this is have one country test something, and then once they figure out how it works, then they're going to implement it worldwide. Other types of money. We're going to move on from CBDCs and talk about some free market alternatives. I'm very much a Ron Paul fan. When he held up the silver in front of, was it Bernanke, and said, we need competing currencies, why can't we have silver? I think that's true of all monetary units, whatever form. Everybody's going to like different things, but I like the competing marketplace where you get to choose what you like. I'm personally a gold silver guy, but I got no problem choosing Bitcoin or seashells or whatever you want. Barter, I don't really care. I think we should decide for ourselves. I think as free people of the world and of the United States, we should decide for ourselves. Bitcoin's one. Cryptocurrencies that come under fire from countries like China and the US are either trying to regulate them or ban them or whatever the case may be. The US, I think, is going to regulate Bitcoin with the SEC and the CFTC and other associated entities. They're already doing it. And with the ETFs and other regulation coming, they're going to try to build like a walled garden around Bitcoin to keep it from becoming the free currency. Whether or not they succeed, I don't know, but that's what they're trying to do. They facilitate control by market makers. So when you get ETFs, much like commodities, much like the stock market and the S&P, everybody wonders why the S&P keeps going up when the banking system is falling apart and inflation is killing us, because it's controlled by market makers. It's controlled by an oligopoly of a few banks. We know who they are because they're on the Office of the Comptroller of the Currencies report, and you can go look that up if you wish. We have it on our channel every Tuesday. I talk about it on my Tuesday market report video. But basically, the market makers control the flow of these things. So by bringing Bitcoin and BTC and these other ones into the purview of the government and allowing the market makers to control flow, they're going to try to ring fence Bitcoin, I think. I think they're going to lose. I don't think they're going to do it, but they're going to try. Then we have asset-backed digital currencies. One of those is Kientz, wearing a Kientz shirt. Kientz is a company that started in Australia. They started with the ABX exchange, which is a traditional gold exchange, physical gold and silver exchange. They added a Stellar blockchain on top of it. It is a gold and silver backed blockchain. It's audited 4 times a year now. It's going to be 2 years. And they have gold and silver for every unit they produce, but what you can do is you can send money overseas at a fraction of the cost. So they married gold and silver with the blockchain. The blockchain isn't the coin, it's just the transmission mechanism, and allows you to send money quickly and easily to anybody else in the Kientz network. Plus, with the transaction fees they charge, which are very small, they take gold and silver out of storage and get it moving, and that circulation allows them to pay for storage for you. So if you have Kinesis or Load or these types of companies, you don't pay for storage. Well, Kinesis you don't. You don't pay for storage. In fact, you get a holder's yield, so you get something back for it because now it's circulating, and through the fees generates all of that. Kinesis and Load. I think Aurum is another one where if you already have, let's say you have a Brinks account, you've got some gold stored, you can go to Aurum and say, I want you to put that on the blockchain. You don't change custody of your stored metal because they have Brinks as a partner. You just can send it to other people, and they just change the warehouse receipt on the back end. So lots of different options for asset-backed digital currencies. I personally think it's the money of the future if you want to use gold and silver, because it's hard to carry around gold and silver and purchase things with it. It's also hard to send it to Amazon when you want a package. So we need an electronic transmission mechanism, plus we want to get out of wires. So to get out of wires, the best way to do it is to go to the blockchain. So if we're interested in all an a fast and efficient way to electronically transfer gold and silver, Kinesis is a good way to do it. Load's a good way to do it. Just be aware of those. Of course, you got gold and silver. I'm a huge gold and silver guy. 2009, the only time I ever got laid off from a job was working for Ernst & Young. I was on a project, interestingly, in the summer before in 2008 for Morgan Stanley. I'd done a bunch of audits, and they gave me a special project. They said, we want you to go fix loan portfolios. This is before it made the news about Lehman and all that stuff. So I got this project. I roll into Morgan Stanley. They gave me 50 people, and they're like, go fix these loan portfolios. And I'm like, what part of me being a technical auditor makes you think that I can go fix a mortgage problem? Little did I know the entire mortgage market was blowing up. It hadn't hit the news yet. So me and 50 other kids, basically we were a mix of business process people, CPAs, and technical people. Why they put me at the top of this as an IT guy, I have no clue. But we went and fixed this portfolio of 52,000 loans. Novastar was the company that owned them. It got bought by Morgan Stanley. Long story short, they were adjustable rate mortgages. They were all screwed up. Plus, when they uploaded the data to Morgan Stanley servers, they had a different system and everything was screwed up. So we fixed it. Took us 7 months. I made my company $7 million, and then they turned around and fired me the next February. And I said, I just paid for 100 years of my salary on the biggest project in the Southwest area in a Big Four public accounting firm. Why in the hell are you firing me? And they said, sorry, you don't have your CPA. And I said, but I raised more money than the CPAs. And I solved a problem your CPAs couldn't solve, but they didn't care. So then I got really kind of mad because I just had my son, my second child, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem right. I did everything right. I graduated with honors from college. I was working for a Big Four public accounting firm, kept my nose clean, did everything they told me to do, and I just got screwed. And I have a kid, and I'm like, what do I do now? And my wife had just gotten done with her PA school. She wasn't making a ton of money at the time. PAs weren't really recognized back then. Now it's a big part of the medical system, but we were like, we just bought a house. It's like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? So anyway, we had to figure out what to do. And so anyway, I got involved in researching. I came across Austrian economics. I came across gold and silver. I wrote a book, having never written anything before. Had to self-publish it. Nobody knew who I was, but it got me on Seeking Alpha. And Seeking Alpha got me syndicated to Yahoo Finance and NASDAQ, and I started getting offers to write for everybody. And I did write for about 15 years before I quit. Along the way, some friends of mine said, hey, why don't you get on this thing called social media? And I hated social media. YouTube, I thought, no, I'm never getting on it. I was old school. Even though I was an IT guy, I was really more of an analog guy. And I think that's what attracts me to gold and silver. But I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I found a following, and now that's what I do full time. And now I love it because it's brought me to Citizens for Sound Money. Citizens for Sound Money is this awesome organization that was founded by Mary and Jim Forsyth, Reno Catese, and they were three people just wanted to do something about sound money. And so I met, Jim was a former New Hampshire state senator, I believe, organized Ron Paul's campaign here when he was running for president, former Air Force pilot guy. Nicest guy, engineer, smartest guy I'd ever met. Had a way about him of uniting people. He talked me into getting involved. All I did was YouTube videos for him for a while. I helped hook him up with some suppliers. He wanted to also do a silver business. And along the way, he said, hey, you want to get involved with C4SM? So I started doing videos for him, and I thought it was just education. I'm like, great, I'm an education channel, let's do it. And then they hired Daniel Diaz to be their director, who's sitting back at the back of the room, and then he became executive director. He has 22 years experience lobbying, and then they started pushing legislation. Last year, was it last year or the beginning of this year, we got 4 bills created in Florida last year 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate, and we got this close to passing gold as money again in the state of Florida. This close. We spent $100,000 doing it, and the only thing that blocked us was the leader of the House because, well, leader of the Senate, which basically says, I don't even want to hear your bill. But we pushed back, and we got a study bill on it, and they're spending $200,000 on it, and we're going to come back next session, I think, get it passed. But, And she's gone out of the Senate. It was her last term, and she said, screw it, I'm going to screw this bill. I don't care the repercussions. But we're going to get it pushed. We're going into Texas next year. We've been working with Missouri and New Hampshire. And we're probably, with our associations, I would say, the leading group in sound money in the United States. We do more, we spend more. Thank you very much, and we appreciate that. So we're trying to bring sound money back to the U.S. because without it, we don't want our kids to become slaves. I don't want to become a slave. I'm only 49. I've still got plenty of years left in this world. But I don't want my 2 kids to become digital slaves. And so this has now become my passion. I spend probably way too much time doing it. Honestly, I love it. I'm a volunteer is why I say that. So I've given up, a $150,000 job I walked away from working for Verizon Cybersecurity to do this, my educational channel, and for C4SM, and never look back and have no regrets whatsoever. It's not about the money when you become a slave, because the amount of money you have is not going to matter. I value freedom a lot more. Yeah, you're welcome. So anyway, gold and silver is, we all know about gold and silver. I assume you guys all know about gold and silver. If you want, stop by and talk to me in our tent after this presentation. Like I said, we're going to have a little mixer, some alcohol, some snacks, and things like that. We're going to have a raffle, give away some prizes. It'll be a lot of fun. We're right over here. And if you guys have any questions on any of this, just let me know. I'll be happy to talk with you one-on-one. Oh, here we go through all this stuff. We need more help in convincing a few senators. We're setting up a super PAC to contribute to some senator and representative campaigns to kind of get this pushed through next time. Have gone a long way in doing this and have a lot of help. We're not doing it by ourselves. Other alternatives, there's barter. There's, individual state currencies. There's things like gold backs. Alpine Gold's right over there. In our tent as well, gold-infused dollars, which we think is really cool. You guys have probably seen those circulating around the free market out here. Some people have been spending, tipping or spending them in local grocery stores and things. That's potentially a good way to do it, but that's basically our choices. The battle is going to be states versus Fed. Why? Because Amendment 10 basically says all the rights not specifically granted to the big government goes to the states and the people. And we had this thing in the Constitution, it was Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, whatever, which basically says nothing other than gold and silver should be legal payment, tender of debts, whatever. So we believe that gold has always been money, should always be money, and that's what we're working on, but we're doing it state by state level because we know the only way that gold's going to be money again, or we'll have any form of sound money again, is to fight it at the state level because the states are willing to stand up to the federal government. Governor DeSantis of Florida said no CBDCs. I think Nebraska has passed legislation saying no CBDCs. We now have 6 states, Louisiana being the latest, that has gold as money, including Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Wyoming, Utah, or Nevada. I forget all the ones. Arizona. We've got 6 now. That's over 10%. If we get the big bad boys, 800-pound gorillas, Florida and Texas, we think that that's going to start a cascade across the U.S. That's why we're focused on Texas and Florida in the upcoming session. We think we're going to need $400,000 to $500,000 to get it done. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what is being spent on other things. So we think with a little bit of moderate support, we can get this pushed through, and it'll cascade across the rest of the states. The states want this because when the states try to build a school or a bridge or a road, inflation is destroying their projects, and they need a stable monetary unit to help them fund these 10 and 15-year infrastructure projects. So the state of Florida loves this. The governor's office loves this. Their financial office loves this. And so we think we're going to get this passed. All right. That's my analysis of post-dollar currency alternatives. Welcome to take questions on anything you guys may have. Looks like we've got about 25 minutes. We'll get to that in just a moment. Yes, sir. You can pass them out if you want. So also at this tent over here, right after at 6 p.m., we're going to be giving out little certificates for a free ounce of silver if you want to stop by. Those will be passed out now. Flip the switch on top, I think.
Over my skill. Oh, there it goes.
It's on now.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, so question is, do you remember the Native American guy who used to be in movies, famous guy, he passed away from cancer, and he lobbied to get I think the Lakota Bank and a private bank.
I think I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name, but I think I recognize him.
Once we get this, what do we do with it? Do we like during the time where there was Confederate currency and there was how do we execute, and how can people help?
Well, the cool thing is, once we get the regulation passed, we already have 3 or 4 partners willing to stand up: Glint, Load, Aurum, Kientz, that have systems in place that can actually implement it. So we're going vendor agnostic, technology agnostic. We want the states to choose on their own. The legislation was not written by a company. The legislation was written by volunteers. I wrote part of it. We had other people experience writing parts of it. We came together, and we're writing it in an omnibus fashion to where it can go state by state by state by state by state. We've been working with people that have experience writing legislation in multiple states and refine this 20 or 30 times. But we want the states to determine how to implement it on their own, just like they would do their own currency. We just want the principles of the gold and silver backing. We want an electronic component which allows it to work with the modern economy. We want the states to adopt it to stabilize their own treasuries and their own financial systems. But how they do it's up to them. And of course, that's the way the federal system was designed. If you like the way New Hampshire runs their currencies and their businesses and things, you can move here. If you like Texas, you can come down to Texas with me. If you like Florida, you can go to Florida. That's the way, you know, our federal system was designed, and that's the way we want the money to be implemented. We want different models that allow for different solutions to be tried, and whatever the best solution is at the end of the day will win out. But we want the people in the states to determine that, not a company and not the federal government. Yes, sir.
And this actually sets up an alternative system. You're not required to use the digital aspect of it.
No.
You can use just, once we reaffirm gold and silver as legal tender in the states and reclaim it,
yes,
then people can actually transact in physical gold, physical silver, specie, gold backs, whatever.
Whatever they want.
Use physical if you want. If you want to use the digital aspect of the proposed legislation in particular states, you can utilize that. Or it just gives you a lifeboat, gives you an alternative to the paper fiat currency, the Federal Reserve notes, right?
That's exactly correct. And it allows for contracts to be written with gold clauses, but it's not required. So it allows complete freedom to people to choose what they want, but it sets up an alternative system to where the feds can't shove CBDCs down your throat and can't track everything you do. It allows people to do what they think is best for them and their families. And certainly if you want to build gold and silver into it, if you want to go digital, if you just want to carry around coins, whatever you want to do, gold backs is a great way to do it. You have a little bill that you pull out, it's worth 5, 10, 20 bucks or whatever.
It's not a compulsory system.
It's non-compulsory.
It allows you to use gold and silver, to transact in gold and silver any way you want, physical, digital, whatever. It's your choice. It gives you an alternative competing currency to Federal Reserve notes.
Yes, the only thing compulsory about it is choice. We're forcing choice, but you get to make the choice that you want to make. Any other questions about CBDCs? I'm waiting for people to ask me about CBDCs. I know there's got to be at least one CBDC question.
I've heard about a potential BRICS currency. How would that work with their plan for a one world CBDC?
So I think the original version of the BRICS currency, China, Russia, Brazil, India, South Africa, I guess, and other countries doing a gold-backed currency really is them saying that they need something on an intermediate basis to get outside of the dollar, but they're also involved in these CBDC projects. I think every country wants the CBDC because they know that's how they're going to have to participate in international commerce. And think about it, if half the world's economies go to CBDCs, are the other half of the world economy not going to do it? Because how are they going to trade? So I think the danger is that while there are elements in each society trying to set up independence from the pure fiat era, I'm afraid that once one big country goes to CBDCs, everybody's going to adopt it just to make it easy, and the technocrats really don't care. And the thing about CBDCs, I really don't trust China and Russia or a lot of these other nations because of their totalitarian history, that I think that ultimately that's kind of a head fake. I think they want control just like the Americans do. They just don't want the Americans to control it through the dollar. And so I think they're talking on both sides of their mouth, but I think everybody's going to CBDCs, in my opinion. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One on the asset-backed blockchain type things. Wasn't too long ago when Bitcoin was starting, there was an e-gold out there, which for about a decade or so worked pretty well for payments. Then the Fed shut it down as money laundering. That a concern going forward for these other big blockchain-based currencies?
Well, yeah, the SEC doesn't like anything blockchain. If you say blockchain to them, they automatically think scam, money laundering. What it really is code for is anything blockchain circumvents their ability to control people, because what's blockchain? It's decentralized, it's immutable. And if they allow a private blockchain currency such as Bitcoin, Monero, or asset-backed digital currency to get in circulation, they can't stop it if people really adopt it. There hasn't been that threshold of adoption of purely private cryptocurrencies yet, but they're afraid of it. They're deathly afraid of it. And so I think anything blockchain, I know people that work with the SEC that say once you mention blockchain, their hairs stand on end and they immediately start wanting to investigate. So I think that they're going to try to stop anything. But if the power of the states and the people is put into practice, it won't matter, because at the end of the day, what is the Federal Reserve going to argue? They're going to argue that the dollar and the subsequent to that, the digital dollar, should be because we've had it for the last 100 years, but they have to get around the Constitution. And if the states are affirming the Constitution, it sets up a battle. The only way they could get past that would be to suspend the Constitution, go to military law. Because I don't even think the Supreme Court is basically going to overrule the Bill of Rights and is going to overrule all of this history. There are too many conservatives on it. Some of them are sort of faux conservatives, to be honest. But even Gorsuch and those guys have said that they'll uphold existing law. So they have to stop it before the states affirm it, which is why we're in the battleground of the states and why we're finding out that these single parties in each state are blocking it, because even though the states want it, the bankers and the federals have bought off certain high-level positions in each of these states, and that's the game they're playing. So that's why we need the super PAC to influence them to say, hey, you know, we can contribute to your campaign too. You don't need to rely on these guys. We'll help you, but we need your support in this. Stop blocking it. You know, and we'll provide you a little financial assistance. We'll help you out with your campaign, things like that, to convert people over to more free market principles. And if we can, like I said, if we can get one of these big guerrilla states, they're going to lose control. It will also, the potential is it will crash a dollar a little bit sooner, and it will force the Fed's hand in saying, well, we have this alternative. But once you get the state saying, no, that doesn't work for us, it sets up that 10th Amendment battle. And that's what, you know, Jim and I were talking before he passed. Unfortunately, we lost him this year, the founder. And we were talking about before he passed, and I said, Jim, this is a state versus federal battle. It's not just about money. It's about the federalist system. It's about tyranny, centralized tyranny and Marxism versus our federalist system and freedom. That's what it's about. And that's why we have to fight every day. We have to fight. We have to make this fight, because we lose control of the money, we lose control of everything. And this is really the linchpin to freedom. If you want your freedom, we have to fight it here. And we have a realistic chance of winning here. If we can get the states to support it, legally they're going to have a very hard time standing up to that, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the second question was, I was wondering if you had any comment on the Nigerian government's attempt to do a CBDC with the Naira.
Yeah, there are pilots on every continent being done, and I think Nigeria is the test. If you look at what's happening in Africa, it's being colonized in a different manner. It's being colonized through trade agreements. China, using their yuan in the Belt and Road, is using an economic model which is not unlike what the British or the Americans have done. They're just not using their military. But you'll notice each of the ports they're building around Africa have a military component. But they're hiding that military underneath the supposed free. And I think what they're doing is they're trying to grab control. And I think that's why the Chinese want to go to CBDCs. And I think the BRICS are influencing the Nigerians to do it. And I think that's the test project for that continent.
Yeah, my understanding was that they tried and it didn't go very well.
No, it failed and failed. In fact, China tried and then Nigeria tried. It was the same system and it failed. India tried, it failed. But Nigeria is starting to, some of the businesses are starting to adopt it. And the problem is even though it failed miserably, it's no worse than their paper currency. So they're just going to keep doing it until they can get people to accept it, which is why we got to fight this battle now. We don't want CBDCs to have footholds in anywhere in the world. Forget the United States. It cannot go anywhere. We have to stop it. We have to show the world an alternative model. Look at what happened in 1776. We woke up freedom around the world in 1776. The U.S. led the world in establishing little r Republican governments. We have to do it the monetary system. They're putting these pilots in around the world. We cannot let them take a foothold. But the best place to fight it is right here in the United States. We still have more freedom than anywhere else in the world. This is the battleground. This is not only battleground USA, it's battleground world is what we're doing right now. I think all the marbles are tied into this.
It seems that since you were able to get legislation introduced in about 20 states, seems that there's an appetite
Huge.
for considering gold and silver legal tender legislation in these states.
Yes.
And it almost seems like we have a window of opportunity here
Yes.
that's going to be short-lived,
Yes.
where we have the possibility of actually passing more legislation in additional states. This year and the last year, you've got 6, 8 states, you got legislation passed in. Amazing. Amazing. But we have a short window
Yes.
that I think everybody needs to realize and get on board with this, because we have to get this across our legislatures or we're dead. We're done.
And the time, thank you very much for that. And the time frame to do it is before the next crash. Once we go to the next crash and it's ugly and scary, people will adopt whatever the state gives them. We need to have alternatives built into the states during the next recession so that we have a chance of choosing this type of system and our freedom. Because once we go to the next depression, people are going to be so panicked and starving and worried. And think about AI and what Chris Martenson talked about. Not only are you going to have probably a depressionary, you're going to have civil unrest, you're going to have AI taking jobs so that people are forced into this system. So we have to have the alternative ready, and we have to have people aware, which is why us going to conferences like this and doing YouTube videos is so key, is to let people know this is going on. And I often say on my channel, you guys are the army. I can get on, do YouTube videos and conferences all day long. You guys, you out there and my audience online are going to be the guys to decide whether we have our freedom or not. We need the network effect. We need all you guys out there talking about alternatives. And you don't have to be experts. You just have to plant seeds and everybody that you know and talk about sound and honest money and those principles so that when the bad times come, people are like, well, I remember this guy telling me about this alternative. Maybe we should start doing that. And it's going to be that town hall effect, I think, that's really going to help us out. Go ahead.
Once it gets accepted worldwide, you mentioned how there would be effectively no border for the U.S.
Right.
So how would you envision the world after CBDC is accepted, and then how does that affect like trade and tariffs and stuff like that?
Well, if you look at trade agreements, it's very much going to be set up in regional agreements. If you look at the Belt and Road, the Blue Dot, what used to be NAFTA, I forget what they call it now, T something. Though, like North America is set up as a region. So you would have regional trade centers that are trading with each other, and they are going to trade in the digital peso and the digital dollar until eventually they won't. So it's a stepwise process. It's setting up the trade networks, it's setting up the currencies, and then over time they're eventually going to do away with the country borders. They're going to strengthen the UN and those international sort of institutions, and over time, it takes about a generation. If you read the IMF's work paper on money, they say it takes about a generation to get people into the new system. Well, we've been in digital currencies for about 10 years. So about 10 more years to get people used to electronic money, and then maybe another 10 to 20 years after that to get them used to losing their borders. Because as old generations, people age and they age out of voting position and the ability to actively, protest and things like that, and you take over the educational system and you sit there and hit them with all this stupid ideology they're hitting now, people are going to get brainwashed, and they're going to accept these types of things. And I honestly think the Gen Zers are going to be the ones. If you look at The Fourth Turning, Neil Howe, and you look at Condra Tiff and the Four Seasons, I think the Gen Zers are the spring generation. I think the Gen Zers are going to be the ones that lead us out of this. But we have to lay the groundwork to allow them to do it. We have to fight back. But we're going to age, and then it's the young people that are going to have to really be the instigators of the new system. So we need to teach our kids. We need to get them out of the stupid ideologies in colleges and in high schools and teach them real and honest money. I love the fact that we took this golf cart tour. The Alpine Gold guy rents a golf cart and shuttles people around every year. It's been going for years. We took this tour, and I'm seeing all these families out here, and seeing these kids run around is really inspiring. That's where it starts. It starts in the home. It starts in the local townships. and teaching our kids that, because they're the ones that are going to save our butts, basically, I think. So I've already taught my kids about sound money. They're huge sound money advocates. I think we all need to do that. Because as we get older and we're not able to fight anymore, we need our kids to fight for us, right? So I think it's a generational thing. I think that's a big tie into it. Thank you for the question.
So there were 4 states that had this legislation. How is it being implemented in those states? Like, are people taking physical gold currency to stores, or is it like a gold-backed electronic currency, or what does it look like?
I think 6 states, and there's different models. Some say it has to be U.S. minted coins like American Eagles. Some say it can be any widely recognized coin, or the Secretary of, as a Secretary of State in each state, whatever that is, a treasurer can determine, or the courts can determine. So there are different models. Right now, what we're starting to see is people trading goldbacks, people trading, they're bartering essentially. We haven't seen it reach critical mass to where people are paying their bills. In the state of Louisiana, you can pay your bills with gold if you want to. You can do it in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's one of the other states. But what we need to do is get it in one of these big states. And I think the catalyst where people are going to do it is as the dollar starts to collapse, people are going to look for that alternative. And if we can get these systems in place, Kinesis, Load, Goldbacks, then people will have an easy alternative to go to. Having run a gold store in Texas for about 1.5 years, I did notice people, more and more people were aware, going to coin shows and things, more and more people are aware, and a lot more people are buying gold and silver and goldbacks for that purpose and signing on to Kinesis and even doing some of the private cryptos. But this is where it happens. I mean, PorkFest is the perfect example. This is commerce outside of the dollar. You can use dollars, but you don't have to. And I think that we're going to see more of that come, but it's through necessity. And the funny thing about my gold store was, I set it up in a really nice area of town. Guess how many of those guys I got? Why? Because they have all the wealth. Inflation hasn't robbed them yet. It was all the blue collar guys, the plumbers, all those guys walking into my shop saying, I need silver because I can't make ends meet with my paycheck, and I know I need to do something different. So I think it's going to be the young generation, it's going to be the poorer segments of society that are starting to do this. And I'm seeing a lot of adoption in the young people. An article came out last year on Yahoo Finance that millennials bought more gold than any other generation. They have the least wealth of any other generation, the least high-paying jobs of any other generation, but they bought GLD and gold more than the baby boomers or my generation, Gen X. So you're starting to see that awakening. You're starting to see that. But I think people want to get rid of their Federal Reserve notes first. So while we do have things like this going on, I think people are going to get rid of their Federal Reserve notes and then the gold will circulate. But there are more people in this country that have gold and silver now than you would imagine. And it's the people that you wouldn't expect. It's not the rich baby boomers, no offense to them. It's not. It's the poorer people and it's the younger people. Those are the ones that are turning to the precious metals, Bitcoin, all of those types of things. So I think the foundation is there for those markets to flourish. You just need the catalyst. The catalyst is going to be the death of the dollar. Gresham's law, when the dollar goes out, you spend all that bad money, out comes out the alternative currencies. So I think it's there.